Hello YouTube, this is DVD Review Studios here, and today I'm going to be doing a video of my top 20 favourite movies of all time, which initially I was going to create this video using video clips from the movies I've selected, but it just seems easier since I own them all on DVD and Blu-ray anyway, just to show them in front of the camera and discuss them that way, since the video that I've been editing for the past week or so has already taken up to 10 minutes in time length, and I've only covered a few films, so it just seems easier and shorter to do it this way. So let's begin with number 20, and that is The Hunt, starring Mads Mikkelsen. This movie was a blind buy for me. I just wanted to see something other than Hannibal and Casino Royale, with Mads Mikkelsen as the main actor. And basically, this is a foreign film. It's an independent film as well. It's a Danish movie with English subtitles, and honestly, it was actually quite surprising. It's definitely worthy of the ratings that it has, and for an independent film, it definitely impressed me. So this follows the story of a school teacher called Lucas who works at a nursery, and he's a beloved kind of guy. All the children respect him, and all the teachers admire him, and basically one of the younger children basically likes him so much they show a physical affection for him, and of course Lucas turns around and says that is inappropriate, and from there the child makes up a lie because they feel rejected, which is kind of paedophilic. The lie is of course paedophilic, and basically Lucas gets branded as a paedophile since all the teachers take what the young girl has said out of context, and the whole village turns on him. And so the rest of the movie is basically just how the character clears his name, but it really is quite a compelling story and definitely worth giving a watch. So that is The Hunt, starring Mads Mikkelsen. Next up at number 19, we have frequently asked questions about time travel. This is a low-budget movie, and of course not many people really know about it, but it stars Chris O'Dowd, which is one of my favourite actors, who pops up here and there as cameos in many British movies. And this one in particular is just a really great nerdy kind of movie. Definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it. You can probably find it online somewhere. The DVD is pretty difficult to find, but I grabbed this online, I believe. And yeah, it's just a really nice storyline overall. It's not necessarily a great movie, but it's got some elements in it that are quite good. I particularly enjoyed the soundtrack, which is something I always enjoy in a movie. So that is frequently asked questions about time travel. Next up is Reservoir Dogs, my favourite Tarantino movie, on par with Pulp Fiction and the first installment of Kill Bill, but Reservoir Dogs for me just spoke out as my personal favourite Tarantino movie. So many iconic scenes and some great acting performances from this. Reservoir Dogs. I need to rewatch this, to be honest. I've not seen this in quite a while, but it's definitely a great movie, and if you haven't seen it, this is Tarantino's first ever movie. The first 10 minutes are quite slow, but it definitely picks up, and it's definitely worth grabbing if you haven't seen it. So that is Reservoir Dogs. Next up is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World from one of my favourite directors, Edgar Wright. Truly just such a great movie, honestly. The transformation from the graphic novels into the movie world, it just works so well, and Edgar Wright as the director was of course a great choice of such a fantastic movie. Just overall is just a great character of Scott Pilgrim, portrayed by Michael Cera, which of course the actor has a kind of awkwardness to him in any role anyway, so of course that suits the character of Scott Pilgrim. And just overall a really nice movie, so I definitely recommend grabbing this if you haven't seen it. Some perfect cinematography, and has one of my personal favourite movie moments in there, which has such a great soundtrack. I believe it was from Legend of Zelda, which I'll put a link to the Scott Pilgrim scene in the description. Next up is 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. Love this so much better than the Avengers in my opinion, and definitely my favourite Marvel movie to date. So many great actors and so many perfect scenes. It really is quite tremendous that Marvel actually managed to create something based on a comic book that nobody had really heard of. So definitely impressed by Guardians of the Galaxy, my favourite Marvel movie. Next up is A Clockwork Orange, which is a movie that sparks quite a lot of controversy, but after watching this, honestly, it's not too bad in my opinion. It's definitely worth watching, and I just overall really loved it. The book I have yet to read, but I do own that, and currently I'm working my way through a couple of other books, so this one shall be next on the agenda. But the movie itself, Malcolm McDowell as the main actor, is perfect, and of course Stanley Kubrick as the director is such a great piece of cinematography throughout, so that is A Clockwork Orange. Next up is The World's End, the weakest in the Cornetto trilogy in many people's opinions, but honestly, I like each movie from the trilogy differently. I prefer Shaun of the Dead as far as directing goes, because there's so many unique camera shots and great comedy used in that. Hot Fuzz, definitely for storyline, but this one, it's just overall the characters and the soundtrack that spoke to me the most. I love the soundtrack featuring Sisters of Mercy, Blur, Suede, Soup Dragons, just really great 80s and 90s bands that were included in this movie. And just the main character, Gary King, portrayed by Simon Pegg, was definitely worth it to have this movie. So that is The World's End. Really is such a fantastic film, even though quite underrated by many people. Next up is Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, my personal favourite Star Wars movie. So many iconic scenes in this, and easily just one of the best Star Wars movies to date. Just perfect acting all the way through. I love everything about this movie, to be honest. I love every character, Boba Fett in particular, which is my personal favourite Star Wars character. I mean, who doesn't love Boba Fett? And this particular edition is quite good, since it includes the remastered edition and the original version, which the original, of course, is absolutely amazing as well. So, Empire Strikes Back, definitely the best Star Wars movie, so that is that. And next up, we have another film featuring Harrison Ford, and that is the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The chemistry between Ford and Sean Connery is truly some of the most perfect characters in any movie at all. It's just such a great movie, and I really wish this had been it for Indiana Jones, because the ending where the main characters end up riding off on their horses into the sunset is truly such a spectacular scene, and I really wish it had just ended there and we hadn't had the Crystal Skull, even though it was an okay movie. It wasn't worth having, but this was definitely the best of the Indiana Jones movies, and I'm sure many people will agree about that. So that is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Next up, we have my favourite Pixar movie, and that is Monsters, Inc. Truly one of the most creative pieces of work from Pixar. I mean, Monsters University was okay, but this one, of course, is definitely the better one, and truly such a great storyline and great chemistry between Billy Crystal, who voices Mike Wazowski, and John Goodman, of course, playing Sully. So just overall, a really heartwarming story with definitely some great laughs, and I love the character of Roz and many other characters as well. There's so many unique designs for all the little monsters, and the overall story is just definitely worth giving a watch. So that is Monsters, Inc. Okay, so now to begin my list of top 10 favourite movies, which I'm probably going to have to speed this video up a little bit as it's dragging on. But first up, we have Silence of the Lambs, starring Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. Easily the perfect detective story, in my opinion. There's so many great sequences throughout this movie, and the dialogue is easily some of the best written dialogue from any movie in my top 20 list. And I just love this movie so much. There are so many elements and so many scenes. In particular, my favourite scene from this movie is the sequence where Hannibal is strapped up to the cart with the mouth guard and ends up meeting Senator Martin and says some pretty disgusting stuff to her. But in the book, written by Thomas Harris, that scene is really chopped down, and that goes for quite a lot of things, even though the movie doesn't necessarily contain every single scene from the book. But honestly, the movie is definitely better than the book, in my opinion, but the book definitely has some sequences that are worth reading up on. So overall, Silence of the Lambs, definitely a perfect story. I was actually going to compare this to Red Dragon, which is of course not featured in this top 20 list, but Red Dragon was my personal favourite out of the Hannibal Lecter trilogy. It just seemed more different than the other two movies, but this one I've probably overwatched and I've gone off it a little bit. But rewatching Silence of the Lambs recently, definitely a perfect movie. I would definitely recommend giving it a watch, even if you haven't read the books or seen the other movies. So that is Silence of the Lambs. Next up is one of my personal favourite science fiction movies, and that is The Matrix, starring Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne. Easily one of the best written movies ever. It's just such a great, fantastic science fiction movie, and everything about this, there are so many twists and turns, and for a movie made in 1999, I definitely admire it for being so adventurous, and everything about it was truly spectacular. There are so many iconic scenes that have inspired pop culture, and just everything about this I truly do love. So that is The Matrix. Next up is probably one of the more realistic science fiction movies, and that is District 9 from the director Neil Blomkamp, one of my personal favourite directors. And that is because this movie is just so much better than any other Alien movie, in my opinion. It's definitely a likeable film, and it definitely has some of the more realistic elements to it, and that's because it just looks like something that could happen in real time. The CGI is well applied. It's not a turd fest like something such as Pacific Rim, which I really do not like that movie because of how overly saturated it is with CGI. But this one, definitely a movie I would recommend watching. It revolves around a main character who works for the MMU, and is sort of like a military group in there. Basically what they're supposed to be doing is moving all the aliens from the slum that is called District 9 to an upgraded slum which is called District 10. And throughout eradicating all the aliens from their little slum homes, the main character ends up poisoning himself, and throughout the course of the movie he goes through basically some metamorphosis and just evolves into one of the aliens, which is truly unbelievable. But it's such a great movie, and I recommend watching District 9. Next up is a movie that not many people will have heard of, and that is Crime and Punishment, starring one of my favourite actors, John Sim. This movie, if you have not heard of this, I would definitely recommend going up on YouTube and searching it up. You can find both parts of this movie, which it was originally a television movie, that's why it aired in 2 parts, which are an hour and a half each. And the movie revolves around the character of Roger Raskolnikov, who is a student in debt, and basically he is such a pretentious character, and the psychology in this movie is truly bizarre, but it really is something that I admire and love to follow. And basically the character ends up doing a double murder on a pawnbroker and the pawnbroker's sister just to rob her jewels and stuff that she was originally going to sell, but he robs it for himself. And the rest of the movie is basically just how he deals with the guilt and how he deals with the actions that he has done, and it's just a really great psychological thriller, and I would definitely recommend giving this a watch. It's so powerful and compelling, and it's based on the original book by Fyodor Dostoevsky, I believe, and yeah, definitely worth watching. Really great movie. So that's Crime and Punishment. Next up is my favourite comedy movie of all time, and that's The Big Lebowski, starring Jeff Bridges and John Goodman. Truly a great comedy. Revolves around the character of the dude who was originally called the Big Lebowski, John Lebowski, and gets confused with a guy called the Big Lebowski, who is a millionaire. And basically these group of thugs keep bothering Jeff Bridges' character, and basically throughout that, the characters just want to go bowling, but instead they have to deal with a bunch of people confusing their identities, and it's just a really funny movie, so I'd definitely recommend giving that a watch. Of course, I probably could have given a better summary, but I'm trying to hurry this video up. So next up is the Dark Knight Trilogy, and if I was to choose a movie from the trilogy, it would definitely be The Dark Knight Rises. I just love the character of Bane, portrayed by Tom Hardy, but there are so many other characters which I do love in this movie, and that in the movie trilogy, should I say, and that is Aaron Eckhart's portrayal of Two-Face. And just overall, it's the characters in these movies that really do compel me. I'm definitely a huge fan of all the villains in the Batman movies, and just overall, I think Christopher Nolan did a fantastic job with bringing them to the bigger screen in cinematic form. So I really am a huge lover of the Dark Knight trilogy, and definitely would recommend giving these movies a watch. So that is those. Next up at number 4, we have Donnie Darko, which I've purposely picked this just because of the soundtrack, which I truly do admire the soundtrack in this movie. And the overall movie itself, I mean, it is such a superb film, and everything about this, it was a low-budget film, but honestly, it's critically acclaimed, and everyone loves this movie, and it's just such a different film. It's very unique, and the dialogue in this is fantastic. The overall story is something you have to rewatch over and over, and yeah, I'll definitely recommend giving Donnie Darko a watch. So that is Donnie Darko. And similarly, a movie that you have to watch over and over, that is Inception by Christopher Nolan. Definitely my favourite movie, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Just overall a stunning performance from him, and the overall special effects and everything about this movie is stunning as well. Just overall a really great narrative, and something that you really do have to watch over and over. I got it, I think, the 3rd or 4th time when watching Inception, but I would definitely give this a watch if you haven't ever seen this before. You'll be hooked in straight away, and even if this doesn't necessarily interest you, there are so many fight sequences characters, and just overall really engaging moments in this movie that I would recommend watching. So that is Inception. At number 2, we have the Back to the Future trilogy, which overall is just a really great feel-good kind of movie trilogy. I would count this as one long movie, of course, since each movie is connected and follows on from one another. And honestly, I just love these movies so much. I was late into watching the Back to the Future movies, and I would honestly recommend giving these a watch if you've never seen them before. It was foolish of me to have never checked them out, and honestly, I just love the characters of Marty McFly and Dr. Emmett Brown. They're just so spontaneous, and honestly, everything about those movies is perfect. So that is Back to the Future. And finally, at number 1, a movie that many people would probably be surprised about, and that is Limitless, starring Bradley Cooper and Robert De Niro. And that's honestly because everything about this movie is just something that really does speak to me. As somebody who wants to become a writer in the future, this definitely is a great movie that I would recommend. Just everything about this is great. The soundtrack is definitely one of my personal favourite soundtracks from any movie of all time. It definitely is such a fantastic film, and I truly am impressed by everything about this. So that is Limitless. I'll probably do a proper movie review of that sometime in the future. So that concludes my top 20 favourite movies of all time. Some great titles in here, and by all means let me know what your top 10 or 20 favourite movies are in the comments below. If you would like me to review any of these titles, then be sure to let me know, as I've started reviewing quite a few movies recently, and if you want to check those out, you can check the playlist on my channel, which is basically just all movies that have been released in this past year. So thanks for watching this video, and more videos coming soon.